Hi viewers, in this video I will show you how I removed the bumper cover to gain access to the drain plug and how I changed the coolant in my Jeep Patriot.
To begin, the vehicle was parked on an even surface and safely jacked up. The parking brake was engaged and I placed 4-wheel chocks under the rear wheels. For more safety under the vehicle, I used 2 floor jacks and I added 4 jack stands. First, I removed the 2 front wheels to be able to take out the bumper cover. To undo the screws and the fasteners, I used the following tools: a 7mm socket, a T20 Torx drive socket, a small plastic fastener remover, an adjustable wrench, and long nose pliers. The first components I had to partially disassemble were the wheel well liners. I used the 7mm socket to undo the 3 screws on each side of the bumper cover. Then, with my small fastener remover, I took out the 2 lower fasteners and the upper one. When this section of the wheel well liner was ready, I moved it aside. It was more difficult on the left-hand side because the lower fasteners broke. It was not a big problem since I had spare ones. This portion of the liner was broken, but once removed, I had a good view of the electrical harness and the parts behind. Here you can see one of the screws utilized to hold the bumper cover on each side. I used the 7mm socket to undo them. The 2 signal light bulb sockets had to be disconnected. To unlock the bulb sockets, I had to rotate them counterclockwise 1/8 of a turn, then pull them out. The socket on the right-hand side was too hard to turn by hand, so I used an adjustable wrench to rotate it. Normally, 2 plastic clips should be holding the front lower section of the bumper cover. Long nose pliers can be used to unclip them. I kept the front upper screws for last and I used a T20 Torx drive to undo them. Once all the fasteners were removed, I loosened the bumper cover. There was some restrictions between different parts, so I used a spacer to be able to fully remove the cover. Here you can see the drain plug located at the bottom of the radiator. Before draining any coolant from the cooling system, I made sure it was cool and depressurized. The warnings and the instructions written in the Jeep user guide as well as on the coolant jug label must be followed. Jeep does not recommend using any tool to turn the drain plug, but many times on older vehicles it is too hard to be turned by hand. Personally, I gently used an adjustable wrench to turn the drain plug and open the drain. After, I unsealed the radiator pressure cap to vent the system and drain it. While the system was draining, I took a moment to inspect some components like the relays. When the draining was completed, it was obvious that my coolant was still in acceptable condition. So, I decided it was not required to flush the system with water. Next, to close the drain plug, I carefully turned it clockwise until it stopped. I made sure to collect and dispose of the used coolant according to the local government regulations. Just in case I had made a mistake while pouring the coolant, I placed a rag to protect some parts. Jeep recommends using a spill-free funnel to refill the system. The coolant reservoir hose was pinched to keep the reservoir empty when the coolant was added in the radiator. Next, I slowly poured the coolant in the funnel to let the radiator vent. When there was no more coolant entering the system, I started the engine and I kept it running between 1500 and 2000 RPM. When I was in the vehicle, I was also able to see the level of the coolant in the funnel. For the coolant to flow properly in the system, the cabin temperature must be set to maximum and the fans set to minimum or turned off. Normally, when the needle of the temperature gauge is in the middle range, the coolant flows through the whole system. While the engine was running, the air present in the cooling system was evacuated via the funnel in form of bubbles. When there was practically no more bubbles coming out and the level of the coolant was stable, I turned off the engine. Then the hose clamp was not required anymore and I removed it. Later I took out the rag to grab the upper radiator hose. Step 1. I squeezed the upper radiator hose by hand to transfer the excess of coolant in the funnel. Step 2. I inserted the fluid stopper plug in the base of the funnel. Step 3. I released the radiator hose. Step 4. I removed the funnel, then the coolant contained in the funnel extension flowed down in the radiator. Step 5. The remaining coolant in the funnel could then be poured in the coolant reservoir or in the original jug. Step 6. I removed the funnel extension. Step 7. I removed the radiator filler neck adapter. Step 8. I reinstalled the radiator pressure cap. After, I added more coolant up to the maximum level mark. To double check my work, I started the engine again, then when the system was hot and under pressure, I checked for any coolant leaks. There was no leak, so it was time to refit the bumper cover. To refit the light bulb sockets easily, I added a smear of silicone grease on the rubber seal. These two plastic retainers are designed to fit with the two V-grooves. Then the bumper cover was roughly positioned. The right side and the left side were adjusted separately. After, I fastened the two remaining screws and the lower clip. Next, I refitted and tested the light bulbs. Not long after, I fastened the upper screws. At the end, I refitted the wheel well liners and I installed the wheels.
Removing the bumper cover was time-consuming, but at least the coolant was still clear and not contaminated, so there was no need to flush or seal the system.